Just great.
Three weeks later.
What is up, guys? Today I'll be installing a new starter on my 335i. This will be basically the same process for anything with an N54 or N52 engine. More or less the same starter exactly, same location as well. You can kind of see it down there where the red wire is for the power. Unfortunately, to take the manifold off as it is in the way, which in my case also means taking off the strut bar as it is also in the way. First thing you're going to want to remove are the usual suspects. All the cowls. If you guys still have those installed in my car, you can see I'm missing the top cowl because I have these Burger Motorsports cabin air filters instead of the typical large piece that goes across the engine bay. I also have some various hoses and stuff for the PCV, so ignore that. For the catch can I have. Also, if you guys have a stock airbox that's going to be in the way, that should be removed as well. I also don't have the inlets on this side of the car. They're actually over here. You can see I relocated inlets, so don't be worried if your engine bay looks a little bit different than mine. But the overall process, once you remove stuff, will be very, very similar. Just pull that C-clip off the top of my charge pipe. I'm going to wiggle it off. And also I removed this hose that goes to the throttle body over there. I'm going to pinch these two sides and it pops right off. There's also a connector that connects to the throttle body down here. Kind of hard to see from my fingers on my left hand. If we just push a tab there and push back, you can kind of feel it pull back. In fact, if I pull it from this side, here you can see it right there. I'm just going to move this little vacuum line to the manifold and just pull it off like so. This goes to your diverter valves or your blow-off valve, whatever you have running in your car. Now I disconnect the TNAP sensor. You can see my connector is broken, but it just sits in there just fine still. But yeah, the little plastic's broken, but no big deal. Just remove that and make sure to reconnect it later. Next step is then to remove all of your 11mm intake manifold nuts. You can see over there, make sure you don't drop them. I usually use a Milwaukee tool like this. Use that, and basically at the very end of the stud, I just pull them off by hand. And also the very end over here, this is actually a bolt rather than a stud, which is kind of interesting. So here's what the bolt looks like. Same size, it's also 11mm. Also what I'm gonna do is unplug the sensor over here because it needs to be in the way. And then I still haven't taken my strut bar off, so I'm gonna take that off right now. And then I'll take off the entire manifold just by pulling it off. Okay, just pulled the manifold off, came off pretty easily. Luckily I have no really things in the way. The strut bar is all loosened up, so came off just very easily. And the next step is to first disconnect the battery, and then we're going to come back here and remove the starter itself. There are two main bolts for it. There's obviously one that connects the power, that's just a nut on top of there. There's an electrical connector over here for the solenoid, and then there are two bolts, E-Torx. There's one right behind that wire. Of course you can't see it. There's one right over there at the bell housing the transmission. Now, this will be a lot harder to remove if you guys have your stock inlets because there's going to be an inlet tube right there. But thankfully I don't have that, so I can just do this very easily. If you don't have E-Torx bolts, I believe 10mm or 11mm will work. All right, guys, just remove the two bolts that bolt in the starter to the car, the transmission bell housing, or the back of the engine. The shorter one faces the engine. This long one faces the transmission. This is the one that's pointing back. Kind of going to remove. You guys have a lot of stuff in the way. Even for me, it's a little bit tight, just because the bolt backs out a lot and you're kind of right out of the room. So another solution as well is to run an extension from below the car and remove it that way from behind, which is also quite annoying. That's actually how I did it when I removed the transmission this summer, but removing from the top is also very doable. This guy was very easy from the front, just use an E12 socket on my ratchet over here. In fact, my electric ratchet could get it off without a problem, really. This is also an E12, but a 10mm will work on either of these if you need to do that instead of using the correct socket, especially if you're using a spanner wrench from the back over there, so that'll work just fine. Once those two are out, I've also loosened up this guy, removed the power cable. Obviously the battery's disconnected right now, and just left the nut on there so I don't lose it. 13mm, and now these starters should be able to just come on out of the car like so. And then put your new starter back in exactly the old one came out. Pretty simple the idea. Make sure you use new bolts though, as the bolts are aluminum, so torque to stretch, of course, which means you try to reuse your old bolts, there's a chance they snap. I also bought new bolts FCPEuro. I'll put a link down below. Pretty straightforward, not too expensive either. And I'll put the torque specs on the screen right here. Now all we've got to do is put everything back together, which would be as simple as putting the manifold back on and the charge pipe, reconnecting that, and a few sensors. And after that, we are good to go. The manifold nuts and that one bolt will all be going to be 11 foot-pounds. And also don't forget to reattach your TMAP sensor over here, along with the two throttle blade connections, this one over here, this hose, and the electrical connection down there, and of course the oil pressure switch over here, which we'll plug in after I torque down all the bolts, and also, of course, the throttle body C-clip, which I have over here. I'm going to change this out if your one's kind of old. These things can kind of lose their tension over time, so it's good to replace them every now and then to make sure they can handle all the boost. Other than that, that's pretty much it. So let's put it back together and finish it up, and then hopefully it'll start.